So this is a game that means kind of a lot to me. I'll never forget when my uncle gave me a copy of Assassin's Creed for the Xbox 360. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. All I saw was this dude in a hood, and it made my middle school self think that this would make me the ultimate edgelord. I brought it home, I popped it into my 360. I mean, technically it was my brother's 360, but you get the idea. This game brought me into a whole new world I would have never expected. Thinking of video games back in the day when this trilogy released, I think of a setting that's either like a fantasy world, a dystopian futuristic city, or just like a time and place that reflects the modern day. But Assassin's Creed broke my idea of the norm. It was a historically semi-accurate setting that brought you to the Holy Land of all places in the first title. And yeah, there were games like Call of Duty with a semi-realistic setting, but this kind of took it to a new level. I didn't realize that there was inspiration by real creeds and organizations until one day I was playing and my dad overheard the Templars speaking. He told me some of the history and I was immediately set in a trance. I had beaten Assassin's Creed 1, and then one day when I was trying to look into the lore, I learned that there was a sequel, and with 2 hidden blades this time? I must have looked through the entire Let's Play of Assassin's Creed 2 a dozen times. I knew the game better than Ubisoft themselves. But because I was too young and the suggestive content, I couldn't play it. I had played Altair's Chronicles and AC2 Discovery on my iPhone and my DS to scratch that itch, but I was still fiending for that big brother of Assassin's Creed 2. I begged and I begged and I begged until one day God looked down on me, bared me a fruit, and that fruit was my parents finally being worn down. I'll never forget grabbing my copy of Assassin's Creed 2. I had saved up just enough money to buy it, so my mom finally took me to GameStop. It was like 20 bucks for a used version. There was like an ugly ring around the disc hub, but I owned it. That was my ugly disc ring. Sounds inappropriate. Then we got some McDonald's for breakfast. I was hyped. I got home, I booted the game, and I loved every moment I was experiencing. I felt every plot beat. I chewed in all the scenery on those viewpoints. I waited patiently for my targets to assassinate them. When I think of the games that made me a gamer, Assassin's Creed 2 is definitely on that list. Then I had set my pre-order for Brotherhood, and then I finally got to finish it all with Revelations. This all released as the Ezio Trilogy on the 360 and the PS3, came out in 2016 as the Ezio Collection for Xbox One and PS4, and now we finally have it on the Switch. But going back to what I said, when this came out, they decided to do this instead of a game because they were putting more emphasis on this dog movie. And seeing this finally revealed earlier this year, I was so excited.
Baby, that's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about.
So now we have my favorite game trilogy of all time on my favorite console of all time. The Rogue Collection and 3 Remastered fit really well on the Switch, so I wonder why it took so long for Ezio, the face of this franchise, to finally get ported over. But how does playing Ezio feel all of these years later? Does it sneak into your Switch collection like other games, or is it an old relic from the past? Let's find out.
It is a good life we lead, brother.
At best, it never change.
And may it never change us.
While I love the gameplay to Assassin's Creed, what really keeps me playing is the story. And thankfully the Ezio Trilogy has the best setting, the best plot, and the best characters in the entire franchise. Our first trip in the Animus saw us living the life of Altair, an arrogant assassin during the Holy Crusades. While uncharismatic most of the time, Altair is a total badass, and his interpretation in the first game is the best we really see him. Then Ubisoft really said, "Yeah, we're just gonna make the greatest video game character of all time," while crafting Ezio. Ezio is in the middle of the Italian Renaissance. He's a suave Casanova who's intelligent, driven, lethal, loyal, and kind. He's the man men want to be and the man women want to be with. Ezio's also the only character in this entire series who we see the entire life of. We literally see his birth, the life that he lives, all the way up until his death. I remember seeing this death scene and sitting alone for a few minutes, just jaw completely dropped. This character that had consumed a good 2-3 years of my life was dead. And it felt like I almost lost a friend. It kind of hit me, man. Ezio grew up, mature, evolved, and died before our very eyes. You see the betrayal that Ezio experiences after what you think is an ally sends his father and brothers to die. you see Ezio take his revenge and enact forgiveness on Rodrigo Borgia for killing his family. And that's just in his first game. You see Ezio's mistake of not killing Rodrigo literally bite him in the ass as his son Cesare Borgia invades his homestead in Monteriggioni and kills Uncle Mario.
You have my thanks.
Keep the sword, Ezio.
Do I know you from somewhere?
Don't you recognize me?
It's me, Mario!
This sends Ezio to Rome to build up the Assassin Brotherhood from the ground up and rebuild this great city. And let's just say, it wasn't built in a day!
Brother, this guy stinks!
When first introduced in Assassin's Creed 2, Ezio is brash and arrogant with only revenge on his mind. Then in Brotherhood, you see the responsibility of rebuilding Rome and the Italian Brotherhood of Assassins weigh on his shoulders. And lastly, in Revelation, seeing him as a wise old man to seek knowledge from Altair, who ended up becoming a great assassin and rebuilding the Creed. Revelations had the most hype to me when I was younger. They marketed Altair's return to no end. These two characters' stories were finally coming together. The entire series was going to and has finally come full circle. Along the way as Ezio, you meet some incredible supporting cast members who are also real historical figures. We have Machiavelli, Da Vinci, La Volpe, Niccolo Copernico, Caterina Sforza, and so much more. You grow with them, they become your friends, your new family, they become your brotherhood. And I'm gonna be totally honest right here, I used this game to help me in my early modern European history class, and I think I actually ended it with an A. If you take any history class, let this be a lesson to you. Do not open up the textbooks. Just play Assassin's Creed and you'll do great. But even though all of these games have these beautiful historical settings and these amazing characters, that's not what really kept me going. Of all things, it was actually the modern day. I think these were my favorite parts of Assassin's Creed. They were what helped me most understand the mythology of this universe, how the past, present, and the first civilization all tied in together. I also love the chemistry with Desmond Miles and Sean, Rebecca, and Lucy. Lucy's death was one of the few moments where a piece of entertainment really shook me. Seeing Desmond under the control of Juno was really hard to go through. I tried to get out of it, but no matter what, it ended up the same way. In the finale, Assassin's Creed Revelations, Desmond Mind gets stuck in the Animus with the Subject 16. If you've never played the early games, basically, he's the guy who was in the Animus before Desmond. They were teasing his appearance for about 4 to 5 years at this point, so seeing the end of Altair, Ezio, Desmond, and Subject 16, it made the world feel so vast and epic compared to like a Call of Duty or a... Hold on one second. Or Captain America Super Soldier. Knowing that this war that's been going on for like thousands of years and you were just a pawn may sound like you're just a small player, but you made such a difference in the tide of this war because this specific battle was so pivotal. I wish that the Assassin's Creed series went back to their roots, a crafted story that takes you on this incredible adventure. I understand the appeal to play not The Witcher 3, but let Assassin's Creed be Assassin's Creed and let The Witcher be The Witcher. The plot is grand, epic, and it takes you on a total roller coaster. Seeing the adventure of the two main characters you're playing here with Ezio and Desmond, then Altair in the final entry, really helps put you in their shoes and see how they develop and evolve, and it makes you attached to them. So seeing all of their deaths, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of hurts. While being grand and epic, like I said, it's also really mature and dark sometimes, and I didn't realize all the little details until I replayed it recently. Seeing all of these story beats unfold left me shocked, excited, even sad sometimes. And while I haven't played this trilogy in like 5 years, I've beaten these games countless times. So that should show you how well thought out the story here is. But going back to those historical landmarks, you see throughout the story with these hidden Animus Easter eggs how the Assassins and Templars have fought and how it's affected the world. It makes you feel like you're uncovering some hidden conspiracy, and it gives you such a grand sense of scope. Like no matter what you do, even if you turn the tide in this war, it's not going to leave much of a dent. The one thing that doesn't really sit well with me though is how Assassin's Creed 2 starts off the trilogy relatively grounded. Like, yeah, it is fantastical, but you could still see this kind of story unfolding in reality in some way. Then Revelations, this happens. Ezio is assassinating dudes with a parachute instead of just riding the horses and killing off the guards and having him brawl with the enemy in the air. Not only did Brotherhood have the best beginning, it had the best ending. It felt personal in scope and also larger than life. It felt like a real battle, like everything was finally leading up to this moment.
Then I leave you in the hands of fate.
And the Borgias are easily the best Assassin's Creed enemies bar none. The Borgias really test Ezio, they act as great foils. Rodrigo is very calculating, deceptive, and cunning, while his son Cesare is very intense, sporadic, and untamed. They remind me of Darth Vader and Kylo Ren respectively because of this reason, and they feel real and tangible. They have clear and consistent goals. Rodrigo sees himself as the prophet and wants to take the reign as Pope to get the power of God. Cesare wants to take control of all of Italy by killing those in power to climb the ranks in the hierarchy. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. In Revelations, I have no idea who the villain was or what his motivation was either. I just remember it ending somewhat similar to Lion King.
Long live the king.
I think that they could have done a little bit more with the supporting cast, but they still do great here with the overall screen time that they're given. So Assassin's Creed now and what it was back then are two totally different IPs. Assassin's Creed now is basically an RPG akin to Skyrim, The Witcher, or KOTOR. Back then though, it was mainly an action-adventure game with some RPG elements, and I much prefer it like that. This series back in the day was the standard, not just in the franchise of course, but for most open world games. Climbing up towers, checking out viewpoints, and finding useless collectibles, and the notoriety system may not have started here, but it definitely got it popularized. Now, when these are being talked about now, it's usually followed with a negative connotation, but back then, this was really fun. I loved discovering viewpoints and having it translate to the map, unlocking chests and collecting feathers, and that notoriety system was really fun to play with too. It gave you a choice if you wanted to play this like a stealth game or an action game, and I'd always switch off between the two. For stealth, you have the two hidden blades, which seemed like such an obvious choice back in the day. You gotta stealth kill enemies on benches and haystacks or in the crowd. There's also like poison, throwing knives, and even a wrist-mounted gun for you to play with here. Later on in Brotherhood, you get a crossbow, which was the most badass thing ever. And say you do get caught, you can throw a smoke bomb or even lure some guards into a group of NPCs, toss some money on the ground, and give yourself a bit of a head start. But let's say you want to play this like an action game. One thing that I always found fascinating with this series was how if you were to say, drop a dead NPC into a crowd or publicly kill an enemy, the city reacts. It makes everything feel so alive, like you're committing murder in a big city. I won't say anything if you won't. In Brotherhood and Revelations, there's also vigilantes that help you fend off guards so you can kill them or run away. If there aren't these Batman wannabes to distract the guards, you can either hire mercenaries to kill them or hire courtesans and Romanis to distract them. But if you don't want to do that, you still have all the stealth weapons that I listed before, plus you get like a dagger, a mace, a sword, a big ass axe. There are so many ways to play here. Oh, and dude, the hook blade.
My hook blade.
This completely changed the traversal in the combat here. You could grab enemies and stomp them to the ground, or steal their cash before you kill them, or if you don't want to fight them at all, you could just yeet them out of the way and avoid conflict entirely. It also allows you to free run up buildings far quicker. And the zip lines, dude. I legit go out of my way in order to get on these things. I love ziplining in general, so being able to do this here is a blast. One of the biggest ways that Revelations evolves the gameplay is bomb crafting. You can use all kinds of components to create all kinds of bombs. Fill it with lamb's blood to scare some citizens, shrapnel to kill some guards, or even create a stink bomb. Because we're all a little kid at heart. The more you play these games though, the more it feels like it's turning into a PlayStation exclusive walking simulator. I hope you're a fan of this shot because you're gonna be seeing this a lot. I can forgive the tailing missions, but when you're just walking and talking, it takes me out of the experience. Like, just give me control, let me do something. But no, you're just gonna put that controller down, grab a drink with some popcorn, and you won't be playing for a minute. One thing I didn't like, but now I can appreciate a lot more, are the armor upgrades. I thought it was kind of dumb, especially in 2 when they put the best assassin robes on the cover when you actually play it mostly covered. Plus, it made you feel more like this warrior or a guard brute rather than a stealthy assassin. The combat though really shines, and it still holds up to this day. It gets kinda button mashy, but you're mainly doing counterattacks. Brotherhood introduced essentially an insta-kill mode. Activate instant kill! Where after killing an enemy, you point the analog stick at them and boom. It takes out a lot of strategy and it makes you kind of complacent while playing, but even in Assassin's Creed 2 where this mechanic doesn't exist, you can still cheese the encounters and still insta-kill enemies easily. Thankfully though, this is some of the best parkour in the entire series. Assassin's Creed 2 had some of the best parkour, especially coming off the heels of the first game. It was faster, you had more ways of getting to where you wanted to go, and it was challenging at times. Throughout the campaign, you get better and you learn the ability to reach far enough spaces on walls so you can basically go anywhere. The lifts that shoot you in the sky are really fun to play with, especially running from a bunch of guards that counterweight will crush them and you're just gonna be launched in the air. And seeing just a bunch of dead, cold, lifeless guards, it does something to me. It stays relatively the same until Revelations when you get the hook blade like I said earlier. You are still though in complete control while free running. Any misinput you experience is your fault, not the game's. I think my favorite city to free run in, hands down, it's gotta be Rome. Yeah, it's vast and big, and some sections are just kind of open nothingness for the most part, but it has the best verticality and the most creativity to climb and scale, especially with that mix of architecture and agriculture. Throughout the newer games, it got painfully easy and honestly uninteresting to climb, like in Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. It can make sense for a game like Immortals because that's a new IP, so it's gotta have different mechanics, and that free running style fits that game a lot better than it fits Assassin's Creed. The free roaming in these titles makes climbing up these historical landmarks like the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore or the Doge's Palace feel significant and makes them feel imposing, historic, and monumental. But Assassin's Creed 2 is by far the most simple. It's the most accessible for anyone to just pick up and play. Brotherhood introduces the system of sending out your assassins to kill guards or go on various contracts for missions. I used to hate this back in the day, but ever since replaying on the Xbox One and now the Switch, it's something that I really fell in love with. But the worst thing that Assassin's Creed has ever done in any of their games, it is these stupid den defense missions. God! Ugh! I already don't like tower defense as a whole, but these were just so tedious and boring. I could not stand playing these, dude. The only thing I genuinely hate about this series are these missions. Thankfully, they dropped these missions harder than Ezio dropped Cesare Borgia. So, I've always loved the art style for the Ezio Trilogy. It kind of looks like a Renaissance painting come to life, and I find that extremely fitting, as it takes place during the Italian Renaissance. Other entries in the series just kind of have that generic, realistic look, so Ezio's adventures really stand out the most. I think taking inspiration in this way is really smart, and I don't see enough people talking about this enough. And each city in the entire trilogy just looks and feels so different from one another. Yeah, some of the architecture may look similar, but that's really it. Florence looks very warm and welcoming. It's like a city you grew up in. Venice's blue tint makes you want to go swimming in the canals. Tuscany and Rome are the most green of the cities, but Tuscany is far more barren and Rome is incredibly lively. They designed very distinct districts with varying class status, and I always found that very interesting. It feels like what New York City or LA would be like during this time. Then they just took Ezio out of Italy, plopped him into Constantinople, and this was really jarring. This was originally going to be a 3DS title called Assassin's Creed Lost Legacy, but they just decided to make it the end of his trilogy. I'm kind of bummed out that we didn't get Lost Legacy, but I like the way that they did Revelations. Yeah, it would have been cool to have this 3DS game, but are you really gonna end Ezio's story on a console where most people didn't play the games on? Like, that would feel so cheated. Imagine if you played these games on the 360 or the PS3, and then it all ended on something you didn't own. That would have been terrible, bro. I would have been pissed too. It would be like if they took a character that's really important to this series and killed her off in a panel from a comic that you can't even really see. Oh shit, they did that. The Animus UI here has this sleek color scheme of red and white, and this is my favorite color combo, so of course I'm gonna be a little more biased. Revelations changed it to black and red. It does fit the theme of the modern day with, you know, Desmond being stuck in the Animus, but I don't know, dude. I'll be honest, I'm just kind of sick of black and red. I think it's a little overplayed. But dude, graphics, gameplay, story, they're all great here, but this music, it's music to my ears. This is definitely one of my favorite scores of all time. Ezio's Family became the song to Assassin's Creed. Saying that Jesper Kyd did a phenomenal job here is an understatement. Man, this is up there with Marty O'Donnell's Halo, Mick Gordon's Doom, C418's Minecraft, Koji Kondo's Ocarina of Time, and various artists' Vice City. The voice direction here is also incredible. Roger Craig Smith is our favorite assassin. Ezio is the textbook definition of perfect video game voice acting. He sounds young and brash when we first meet him on the bridge, but the more time you spend with him, the more mature, old, and wise he begins to sound. Roger grows with the character, and now I see why Ubisoft never gave any of their other assassins another game. Ubisoft peaked here like a high school quarterback, way too early. All of the supporting cast here does a really good job here too, and I don't know why, but the scene where Ezio's sister kills the guards trying to invade her brothel, that always stuck with me. I don't know, that kind of felt like a real sibling interaction.
What?
My sister knows how to wield a knife.
and I am ready to do it again.
Spoken like a true auditore.
Well, as real as it would be if there were hidden societies and organizations that worked in the shadows. Oh, The sound effects also sound great too, from running on rooftops to the sounds of NPCs audibly talking. Even the slices and stabs that sometimes don't play because it is a Ubisoft game make the world feel lived in and almost real. Yeah, sometimes there are glitches. I mean, it is a Ubisoft game after all, but I always kind of coin that to the fact that you're in a computer and there are going to be glitches, so with that kind of mindset, it never really took me out of the experience. This collection includes 3 DLC add-ons and 2 short movies, and you know what's really embarrassing? Assassin's Creed Lineage, a 36-minute short film, is a better cinematic experience than Assassin's Creed from 2016. And also, Roderick Heffley is Ezio. That's cool. Hashtag not my Ezio. But alongside the movies and the DLC, in Brotherhood and Revelations, you have these arcade modes. You either gotta kill a certain amount of enemies without taking damage, climb up a building within a time limit, and these were my favorite time killers in the game. Shouldn't it be Time Assassin? Assassin's Creed 2 has these glitches in the Animus that unlock puzzles, and I'm not gonna lie, those puzzles are a bitch to solve. Yeah, you get a movie, but I can't even remember the movie. There's a bunch of content in this collection, and even for $40, while you can get it cheaper for the Xbox One, the PS4, or just get these games on Steam or Ubisoft Connect, I think $40 is still pretty good for what you're gonna get. It doesn't feel as egregious. What is egregious though is the constant audio cutouts of Assassin's Creed Revelations. Like, look at this, you won't hear anything other than the ambient street noise for a while. I didn't edit this out. And all of the games here have this issue. I know they're Ubisoft games and all, but it completely takes me out of the experience when you're in an intense chase and you don't hear any intense music. But when it's there, it's there. The Ezio Trilogy takes you all over Italy and Constantinople. It's hard to really talk about the level design because it's very freeing yet handholdy. In Brotherhood, they introduced optional objectives that offer more challenge, but it does take away a lot of the freedom away from you if you're looking to 100% these games. At least they're fun ones like don't get caught or finish the level within 8 minutes, like stuff you'd probably do anyway. It got kind of dumb when it'd be like air assassinate 5 guards. Like, do you really think Ezio went into a mission thinking, I have made it to Il Vaticano, but first, I've got to air assassinate 5 guards. The hardest ones by far were the ones where you'd have to step into the Vatican undetected. I would always try to kill every single guard there, but somehow some random guard would spot me and I would have to restart from the beginning just to get 100%, and Jesus Christ, this is irritating. AC2 had some of the best missions by far. You'd storm a city with some local mercenaries or use the courtesans to distract the guards and sneak into a building. One of my favorite, by far, you'd be in the Doge's palace, you'd kill some figure in the game, and all the guards are trying to kill you, so you gotta run away from them. It's fun, intense, and it's incredibly pulse-pounding. This was the most excitement I ever got in middle school. Sounds gross. But this kind of excitement and intensity is in all of the games in one way or another. One that stands out to me the most, easily. Dude, the hang glider level, that was the best part. The first time I played this, I flew so damn far. Now whenever I do it, I feel like I can't last longer than 3 seconds. I should probably edit that out.
A minute is all I need.
Indeed.
Well, wait, that came out wrong.
And one thing I think is really dumb, I could replay levels in Assassin's Creed 1, Brotherhood, and Revelations, but not 2. I feel like this would be a pretty easy update, but this collection is already ass old, and I don't think many people are gonna get it for the Switch. This is not gonna get patched out. I hope I'm wrong though. Everything about this trilogy is really good, at least other than the level design. It's pretty average in all honesty, but it's made up for with how engaging the gameplay and the story are. There are side missions where you're hired to kill a target, and those are fun, but my favorite levels by far weren't even in the original story. It's the DLC add-on for Brotherhood. The Lost Memories in 2 were pretty good, kind of just doing their own little adventure, didn't really add anything to the experience. The Lost Archives from Revelations was definitely the most out of the box, but that just kind of felt like a quirky walking simulator about depression rather than Assassin's Creed. But in Brotherhood, this DLC add-on takes you back to Florence. Ezio's story with his girlfriend Christina is more fleshed out, and dude, this gives Romeo and Juliet a run for its money. This is some of the best storytelling in the entire series. It's not incredibly deep, but it feels personal, and when you see how it ends, it leaves a really good impression on you. And like I said with the DLC add-ons for Assassin's Creed 2, it doesn't really add anything, but it does a really good job at world building. So right here we got my favorite trilogy of all time, at least for games. For movies that might be Back to the Future or the Spider-Man Home trilogy, but for video games this is my favorite trilogy of all time. And it finally got ported to my favorite console of all time, the Switch. I bet you're really wondering though, how does it play on the Switch? I played the original 3 on my 360, I've played it on the Xbox One, and I also got it for my Series S, and I never played it. But on the Switch, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed and kind of disappointed in some ways. I noticed this weird thing that I've never noticed in any Switch game. The pixel density is just straight up odd. It looks like the pixel density on a DS game. You know how it's like really blocky? Yeah, you're gonna get that here too. I never had this on the Xbox One when I played the Ezio Collection 5 years ago. Also, sometimes the FPS on the Switch dips down to like 20, but it reverts back quick enough. And one last thing, I don't know why, but playing these games in handheld for the first time for each game, it runs kind of sketchy, but then it runs perfectly fine after that for the most part. It's like the Switch needs to break in the game like when you break into a shoe, and it's really bizarre. Actually, no. One last thing, I'm pissed off that the only game you're getting on this is Assassin's Creed 2. We somehow have The Witcher 3 with all of the DLC on one Switch game card, and we have Dying Light, the entire game with all the DLC on one game card. But Ubisoft really can't put Assassin's Creed 3 and Revelations, the mini movies, and all that DLC add-on on one card. These games are old. They are old. This should be fine. And these games are pretty damn compressed too in some ways, so... It's so annoying when Ubisoft does this shit, dude. But let's check out Assassin's Creed Brotherhood really quick on my Xbox Series S. See how it compares to the Switch version and how well it runs. This isn't going to be an in-depth comparison, just a quick side-by-side, so let's check it out. Well, what'd you expect? It's the Switch versus an Xbox Series S. The Switch is running 30 frames per second while the Series S is a smooth 60. But the more important thing, it looks, runs, and plays really well regardless of whatever you're playing on. Ezio Trilogy made me realize how powerful of a storytelling medium that video games are. Assassin's Creed showed me that games can be just as engaging and entertaining as movies, if not more. There's a total difference between being shown a pivotal scene and being that scene. Minerva breaking the fourth wall and speaking to us was unforgettable. Ezio finding the remains of Altair in his library was moving. And seeing the entire life of Ezio through his and Desmond's eyes side by side is impossible to explain how touching it is. And yes, I know I've been talking about how amazing and wonderful these games are, but these meant a lot to me growing up. When my friends were playing Halo or Call of Duty in parties on Xbox Live, I was playing Assassin's Creed. There's not as much things to do here as there are in like Dying Light or Immortals or Breath of the Wild, but these games wouldn't exist without Assassin's Creed, without Ezio. And people who haven't played Assassin's Creed know this icon. I think it's safe to say that Ezio is up there with the likes of Master Chief, Mario, Steve, or Doom Guy. This is a trilogy that I will always hold near and dear to my heart. Ezio and his supporting cast for me is what Luke Skywalker and his gang were like for our parents back in the day with Star Wars. He's up there with the likes of Spider-Man as one of my favorite characters of all time. And these games are the reason why, even after a lot of questionable moves by Ubisoft, I still get excited for all of their new games. I'm still gonna stick by all of their new releases even if I don't play them. The main reason though why I hold this on such a high pedestal, because this was my escape back in the day. Like most people, school is hell for me for so many different reasons, but after school I would just run home and get sucked into this world and forget all of my troubles. Assassin's Creed gave me something to look forward to every day. So even with the new titles like Origins or Valhalla and the newer games like Assassin's Creed Rift or Infinity, I'm still gonna keep my eye out for them. I'm still gonna be pretty excited even if I don't play it. I'm always gonna appreciate this franchise, but nothing will ever top this trilogy for me. This has one of my favorite characters and video game stories of all time. There's fun combat and challenging free running and unique art style all culminate to this being a wonderful experience, especially on the Switch. And whatever you decide to play this collection on, I'm pretty sure you're gonna love it. I don't care if you buy this for the Xbox, PlayStation, Switch. If you buy this collection, you are going to have a great time. I've wanted this trilogy on the Switch for the longest time, and I'm so happy that it's finally here. I used to play Bloodlines on my PSP, Altair's Chronicles, and 2 Discovery on my DS, and looking forward to Lost Legacy on the 3DS when that was supposed to come out, and how that's Revelations. This has come full circle for me. And hopefully too, Ubisoft recognizes that there are fans like me of the original game formula, and maybe they'll rebrand it in a certain way. Maybe they could do this with Prince of Persia. I don't want them to stop the new game styles, far from. They have their own fans, and they're gonna like this series too, and that's gonna be their escape. What these games were for me, that's gonna be it for them. There's a space for both of these kind of games to coexist. I just want us Assassin's Creed boomers to have our fix again. And playing these games again made me feel like a kid. It brought me back to my childhood. Booting up Assassin's Creed Brotherhood for the first time in years, I started dancing in my chair. It's a fun experience and it's chock full of content. The Ezio Collection is one of the gold standards that I set with why the 7th gen of game consoles is the best gen we've ever had. And without a doubt, one of my favorite games of all time. So if you're wondering, should I get this on my Switch? The answer is yes. I don't care what platform you have this on either. If you're interested in these games, buy it. I'm not going to subject you to say, oh, you have to get it on this or you have to get it on that. This is an amazing collection. These games are my favorite of all time. If you have a chance to play them, please play them. Anyway, dudes and dudettes, I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to click that like and subscribe button, and let me know down in the comment section below, what is your favorite Assassin's Creed game? I feel like most people will say it's something from the Ezio Collection, but I know Black Flag is really popular. I heard Assassin's Creed Unity has done a lot to fix its old problems. Whatever your thoughts, let me know down below. Anyway, dudes and dudettes, you're never too old or too cool for video games. Major Pineapple out.
When I was a young man, I had liberty, but I did not see it. I had time, but I did not know it. And I had love, but I did not feel it. Many decades would pass before I understood the meaning of all three. And now, in the twilight of my life, this understanding has passed into contentment. Love, liberty, and time, once so disposable, are the fuels that drive me forward. And love, most especially, mio caro. For you, our children, our brothers and sisters, and for the vast and wonderful world that gave us life and keeps us guessing. Endless affection, mia Sofia. Forever yours, Ezio Auditore.